Let's talk a little bit about navigating those conversations. So I want to show you this slide, which we end up showing a lot, which is the process that you might take a prospect through. And while this process is designed for talking to prospects, it totally converts exactly one-to-one to talking to referral partners. So let's just kind of walk through this. When you first meet someone, you have this initial contact, and so that could either be a cold call or it could be talking to someone at an event. And so during that first contact, if they're a prospect, you probably want to pre-qualify them, which is asking them questions to learn about any challenges they're having or if you might be a good fit for them. Now, we're not trying to, when we meet people at events, we're not trying to qualify them because they're referral partners. So, but remember, we do have the rule of reciprocity. So we do want to still ask them questions. And you'll notice in the gray box here, it says 80% on the prospect, 20% on you. So that still applies. 80% of the initial contact we want on the referral partner because we're wanting to make it all about them and learn about them. And so the next step in the process when you're dealing with a prospect would be to schedule an appointment. And that's where you might want to ask more qualifying questions and learn more and build interest and maybe drive them to the next stage, which is scheduling a presentation and whatnot. So the appointment step still works when you're dealing with referral partners and networking because this is where you're going to have more time to build that relationship with that potential referral partner. So it's still a goal that you have, just like when you might cold call a prospect. When you meet a referral partner while networking, you still kind of have that goal of appointment. You might not call it an appointment, you might call it meeting over coffee or getting back together, But it's kind of the same thing, and the only thing that you do is instead of asking maybe your pre-qualifying questions, you're just going to ask more questions about what they do. The questions might be slightly different, but this process is exactly the same. And so applying that to our conversation that we have at a networking event, we want you to make it all about the other person. What can happen a lot is someone asks you what you do. And if you sit there and answer all their questions, you're going to find yourself at a networking event where you talked all about yourself. That can happen very easily. In fact, if you're networking and you're talking to people that are good networkers, you're going to actually see where you're going to try to make it about them and they're going to keep flipping it back to you. I've been in conversations where we were both like trying to pass the ball back, back and forth. What you want to do, as much as you can control, is to keep the conversation mostly about them. So asking them questions. If they ask you what you do, you might give them a quick answer, but then shine the light back on them. While they're telling you and answering about what they do and answering your questions, try to think about a way that you can help them. And so one of the easiest ways to do this is as they're talking to you, start to think about someone you can introduce them to. That's what I do, and it's a great way to put a bunch of water on that seed. It's a great way to feed into that rule of reciprocity. At some point in that quick exchange, you do want to talk a little bit about you. Hopefully they're going to give you that opportunity. And I would say most even if they're a bad networker or whatever, at some point it's going to come back to you in terms of for you to talk about yourself. So you want to have a quick and powerful pitch that you can deliver that doesn't go into all this boring detail about what you sell or what you do. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Now, like in that process, you want to keep the conversation about 5 minutes. This is for a couple reasons. One is, remember, you have that goal of scheduling an appointment, or let's call it coffee or one-on-one. And if you don't necessarily want to get into this long 15-20 minute chat at a networking event, because that kind of steals the thunder from the meeting over coffee. But really the more important reason why you want to keep conversations to 5 minutes is because you want to work the room. The more contacts you can meet at a networking event, the more it's going to be worth your time. So if you talk to each person less and then move on to meet someone else, you're going to be more productive. You're going to generate more leads instead of talking to a couple people for a long period of time. And a good way to do this is you can very easily end up in a good conversation with someone where they're asking some good questions or they're talking about some stuff that's really good and you could keep going. But it's real easy to say, you know what? we're getting into some really good stuff here, and I want to learn more about what you do. Or if they're asking you questions about you, you could say, that's a really good question, and I'd like to explain it to you in more detail. So why don't we chat on another day? I mean, I can either come by your office, or we can meet over coffee, or I could give you. We could schedule a call if you're extremely busy. So, and then you exchange business cards and you move on, and now you're meeting someone else. So that's a good way to navigate the conversation. Here are some networking questions that are just really good. Get to know. Probing questions. How's your day going so far? What do you do? How long have you been doing that? What did you do before? What do you like most about what you do? Is there something that motivated you to get into that type of work? Where are you from? What brought you to this event? Have you found this to be a productive event for you? Are there any other networking events you recommend? How can I help you to be successful? What does a good prospect look like for you? So some great questions there. It's not a complete list. If you were trying to stay within 5 minutes, you're not even going to get a chance to ask all of those. There should be something there that you can take and apply to your networking. So if you ask these questions, the prospect's going to be talking, right? You're going to be learning about them, and that's great. You're even just getting the prospect to talk and you showing interest in them, it feeds into the rule of reciprocity. Because if you show interest in them, then that is more likely to get someone to want to invest time showing interest in and being interested in you. So we're interested in them, and then at some point it's going to probably come back to you. Ideally, it would be they're talking first, and then it comes back to you if you can control that. And so when it comes back to you, remember, this is the stuff that Sales Scripter spit out. So when someone says, "What do you do?" Okay, instead of me saying, "Oh, I'm an entrepreneur," or "I have a sales consulting business," or we have a sales scripting software app," right? That's a product. Those are all product pitch explanations. Instead of me doing that, let me share a value statement with someone. So let me just look at and see. I'm just looking here what's here. So someone says, "What do you do?" Oh, well, what we do is we help salespeople to have more success when cold calling and prospecting. Period. Right? Now, that doesn't necessarily say what I sell. It says how I help. And it's just a much more sophisticated way to communicate. Now, this can do a couple things. One is it communicates more effectively how I help people, right? So that says more than me saying I have a cold call scripting app. It also it can make the other person curious, like, "Oh, you do? Well, how do you do that?" They might ask you a question, and then you can start to get into some details of your product. And so how I might do that is you can say your value statement and then add a little bit of details of your product right after that. But whether they ask or you just do it automatically, I could say something like, "Well, we basically help salespeople to improve their ability to get into new accounts and generate new leads. And we do that through providing a sales prospecting application that someone uses when they're making calls and talking to prospects." So there I added some product details. Another way that you can communicate like what you do is by sharing the common problems. By the way, let me just pause real quick. This is what was produced by Sales Scripter, and I'm not saying that you carry this around on a piece of paper and look at it when you're networking. I'm saying you use this to organize your thoughts, and then you might look at this before you go out networking and have it in your head, and after you've done that a couple times, you might not have to look at this again. But this is about organizing your thoughts. But you could use these common problems here to explain what you do. So someone asks me what I do. Well, I work a lot with sales professionals, and they often have some challenges with cold calling and prospecting. It can be difficult and seem like a waste of time, and it can often be really difficult for them to generate leads and get into new accounts. And so what we do is we basically provide a software application and services and training to help with those challenges. That's what I do. Again, that might leave some curiosity and leave some questions, and that's great if it does. They might, it presents you this opportunity for you to get in more detail. Or it presents a question, and that provides an opportunity for you to schedule your one-on-one. They say, "Well, it's an app. How does your app help with cold calling?" Well, that's a good question, but I tell you, it's actually it'll take me a little bit to explain it, and it might even just be quicker if I show you it real quick. Why don't I just pop by your office if you're curious, and I can actually show you a quick demo, and at that time I want to learn more about what you're doing and whatnot. So, and then you close for the one-on-one. You'll see the third section here are pre-qualifying questions. Those are more for prospects than referral partners. So those might not come up when you're at a networking event. If you start to think that the prospect is maybe, I mean, the potential contact is more of a prospect than a referral partner, you could throw some of these out there. You know, you're talking to someone, hey, well, let me ask you real quick, how happy are you with your ability to generate leads or get your foot in the door of new clients? You know, so you get the other person talking. So it is a way, it's a very direct selling approach. So this is what you would use for talking to prospects. Now, you could tweak those questions to fit if you were like wanting to still sell through someone. So if someone was like, well, who is someone I could introduce you to? You know, they are asking you that. And then you might say something like, well, something that I might ask someone is how happy are they with their ability to generate leads or get their foot in the door of new clients? So, you know, someone that would answer that question with a lot of concern is someone that would be a good contact for me. So if you know anybody that would have that issue, then that might be good.